Hey, David Brewster here with another 3 for All, and this is 3 Niccolò Paganini Licks from 1807. And I'm sure some of you are probably like, do what? But, Niccolò Paganini is obviously a very famous violinist. But a lot of people don't realize he also played guitar. No way. And the image that goes along with this video, that old, old-timey looking guitar, that was actually Paganini's guitar. His signature is on the face. I think it's somewhere on the body. Um, but that's pretty interesting. Now, he didn't publicly perform guitar. He publicly performed violin, but he privately, he loved the guitar. He traveled with it. He played it, for friends and things like that in private, played it for himself. And, that's kind of interesting. It's like, whoa, he's kind of like a early guitar hero. And, for a lot of rock and metal fans, not to mention classical music fans, and just musicians in general, Paganini has this history, this aura, or this draw, historically. Musicians really just can't resist his music. He was so, exceptionally talented and advanced that it freaked people out. And even people, that were around during his lifetime, they literally thought he was possessed because of his virtuoso, musicianship. And they nicknamed him the witch's son, and they also nicknamed him the son of the devil. And those nicknames and that legacy actually followed him through his whole life. He was actually when he died, like they didn't want to bury him, in sacred ground. And later they had a proper, burial like in a cemetery. But that goes to show you like a bad reputation and this negative kind of devil influence kind of, haunted him during his life. And it's interesting that almost 100 years later, Robert Johnson had the same problem. Almost 100 years, a little less than 100 years, but pretty close. And that's really interesting, to hear and see, a musician that's so gifted and talented that people don't believe that it's real, and they immediately try to blame like the devil or something, and it's like, well, no, he really was just that talented. Even though Paganini didn't perform, publicly with guitar, he did include like guitar accompaniment in some of his pieces, like some of the concertos and stuff like that. But and he composed a lot. He has a lot of music. But most people are most familiar with the 24 Caprices, which the 24 Caprices, they were really just 24 etudes or 24 violin, kind of workouts, really. And they pushed the technical parameters and the ability of violinists around the world. And violinists still cling to those 24 Caprices. If you're a guitarist and you like Van Halen, most, Eddie Van Halen fans, they cling to Eruption and Spanish Fly. They kind of hold those, those solos close. That's what violinists do. They get a hold of Paganini, and they don't let go. They become obsessed, and they start working through that material. Now, the lesson that we're going to look at here, the licks, these are all basically from Caprice number 24. We're going to look at the theme and a couple variations from that famous piece. But don't get this confused with Caprice number 5. Now, Caprice number 5 was what Steve Vai kind of absorbed or regurgitated, for the movie Crossroads. And then also what Jason Becker, Yngwie, Angelo Batio, and also Joe Stump have all kind of reworked, that particular Caprice. Now, Caprice number 24, which is an A minor, that's also been kind of hinted at from people like Yngwie, the Great Cat, the band Halloween, honestly, also kind of borrowed a little bit of that theme. Even Victor Wooten, the great Victor Wooten bassist, he kind of borrowed some of that theme or that, the sound of this piece. But there's one guitarist that you probably aren't aware of that just literally blew the doors off of the whole thing. His name's Elliot Fisk, and he actually recorded all 24 Caprices on the guitar, on classical guitar. And it's killer. If you haven't heard that before, if you haven't heard him, he's playing these technically demanding violin caprices or etudes on guitar, and it's insanity to hear it, and it's like, wow, and he's doing it authentically, which is really cool. The opening, that was actually the theme from Caprice number 24, so I'm going to run through that again, and then we're going to break it down. Alright, so the first thing we should do is just talk about the chord progression, like what's happening, behind the scenes, because that might seem very elaborate and detailed, and it is, but there is kind of a method to the madness, behind all of it. So really, it's moving, it's in 2/4 for one thing. And obviously this is a violin caprice or etude. And here I am playing it, on an electric guitar with distortion. So we're not worried about, the traditional, kind of classical guitar approach. Now that's very beneficial, and I've studied that for years. But I'm a 21st century guitarist. Basically what's happening behind the scenes is it's moving from A minor to E in the beginning, as far as the chord progression. So you can kind of hear that movement between a minor 1 and technically a major 5. So it's hinting right off the bat at A harmonic minor. And then right there it's going to modulate to A major, and then D minor, and then G major to C major, and then a B diminished 7 back to A minor, and then F7, E7, and then A minor. And that's basically the entire, progression and the overall, kind of umbrella over Caprice number 24. Because basically that's the theme, that's played a couple times, and then there's basically, 11 variations in this caprice. So the variations are all radically different. And they involve, arpeggios and chromatic ideas and octaves and all sorts of craziness. And they're really challenging and really good, to kind of break down and study. So to kind of break down this theme, we're going to basically just, starting this little melodic phrase in A minor. And then it shifts to E major. Right? So keep in mind we're in 2/4, so it goes by kind of quick. Now right there it does, slide that E down to like the octave E down here on the 2nd fret on the D string. And I exaggerate those when I play it. I don't think they're actually, you're not supposed to slur those slides. But I do. I think it sounds kind of cool. The second half, that higher, higher positioned idea, it starts right here, and this is going to function for the A major. And then right there, it's going to move over to D minor. And then G. And then this is going to function for C. So it's interesting because it's going by really quickly because we're in 2/4. So you're only getting a glimpse of each chord. And it's implied chords. Obviously, we're not really playing like full arpeggios or chords there. It's implied. So one more time there, slowly. Here's the next example. So these really aren't licks. This would be the first variation, and this revolves around arpeggios. So I took, Paganini's Caprice number 24 and applied it to the 3-for-all, late night lessons format here. So keep in mind, these really aren't licks, they're workouts. And this is an arpeggio workout. So we just covered the theme, and now this first variation, it's going to borrow the same chord progression, but it's played in an entirely different way. Your ear is still going to pick up, that theme because you're going to hear the chord progression, but now it's going to be played this way. And that's really interesting because, you know, if you remember that chord progression we just looked at, you know, there's A minor and then E major, you know, played as arpeggios right there. And once you played through the A minor and E major, you know, kind of in the same position there, then it's going to change to A major, right? And we're going to be way up here playing this large, you know, A major arpeggio that lives right here. And then you're going to go up D minor right there. And then come down G major. And then go up C major. Here's the B diminished 7. And then A minor. And then you've got that little F7 to E7 thing. Really cool, and it's all over the place, and definitely a good arpeggio workout. The next example, this is actually variation 4, so we skipped over variations 2 and 3 to make it to this one, which I did that intentionally. I wanted, you know, to show this variation. And I've nicknamed it the Chromatic Fantasy simply because it has a lot of chromatic usage, and it's very challenging. So this is a good, you know, picking and fingering workout. It's also just a great phrase. It reminds me of Chopin or something like that. And it's still using the chord progression that was introduced during the theme. It's just hiding in the middle of all this, you know, chromatic, you know, magic right here. And this is really tough, I'm not going to lie to you. That's really hard to play. And I've also, you know, kind of chose to maintain kind of a 4-finger fingering throughout as often as possible. So don't be lazy. Like, don't, you know, neglect your pinky. Try to include that pinky finger. Now I'm going to go through that very slowly. Alright, so that's like the first part of it. Let's break the second half down, which this is tricky. And we're just basically outlining, you know, that A minor, D minor, you know, G to C, and then the B diminished, of course, too. And that's going to function as the B diminished right there. And then really cool, and it's so hard to play, but it's a great exercise and workout. And here's a bonus lick or idea, you know, from Caprice number 24, and this would be variation number 7. And this one focuses on legato, and there's a whole bunch of string skipping going on. And I know when I first learned this piece, I'd never played anything like this before. It blew my mind. I thought, whoa, I've never seen anything like that. And it's really tough. Definitely, you know, Paganini's caprices are no joke. I mean, they're seriously technically demanding, you know, pushing the technique and ability of anybody that works on his music to the max. So once again, we're still using that chord progression from the theme. But it's really blurry and kind of hard to see when you play it like this. And it's really weird and quirky because it's jumping all over the place. So let's slow it way down. That's the first part. And then the second part So you're all over the place. You're jumping over strings, you're changing positions, and it's really tricky. When it changes to A major, you've got this. Which is really tough. That's going to wrap this look at 3 Niccolò Paganini Licks from 1807. And really, it's just the theme and a few variations from Caprice number 24. And the 24 caprices were put together and written to challenge violinists and kind of boost, technique and ability, dexterity and strength and speed and everything. And guitarists have kind of silently and secretly been bringing a lot of this to a 6-string world for a long time. And it's really inspiring, to look at some music that was written hundreds of years ago, and it still has this magic and this power. Even in today's world, when you hear it, it's like, whoa, that's so cool. I want to learn how to play that, And, I love classical music just as much as I love rock and shred and metal and blues and funk and all these other styles of music too. I just love music. So, anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.